My daughter, Princess Genevieve, is the light of my kingdom and the bane of my existence. A true thorn, spirited, stubborn, and far too fond of climbing the castle ramparts rather than learning courtly etiquette. The weight of the kingdom, the alliances, and the future rests heavily on my shoulders, King Arthur Pendragon, and my primary duty is ensuring stability through a proper marriage. It is this duty that brings me grief this day that a young knight, Sir Gareth, a lad with more heart than coin and a squire's enthusiasm, had captured my daughter's attention. I had seen the way he looked at her during the justs, and the way she smiled behind her fan, a gesture entirely too demure for my Genevieve. It was a sweet, foolish, and utterly inconvenient romance that threatened my carefully laid plans with the Duke of Northington, an alliance crucial to securing our northern border. The Duke is old and dour, but he commands a formidable army and needs a young wife. It is a harsh truth of governance that I summoned the boy to my study yesterday, a dim room filled with maps and the smell of parchment and pipe tobacco. The lad stood straight, his eyes bright with a naive belief in love conquering all. I offered him gold, land in the remote southern marches, anything to make him leave the court quietly. He refused, speaking of honor and a love that transcended station. Foolish boy, I had him locked in the square tower. Initially, I merely intended the confinement to be a temporary lesson in courtly realities, a brief stay before banishment to some distant outpost. But later that evening, a guard brought me a damp, folded piece of parchment found in the knight's quarters, a love poem of sorts. It spoke of a future where his heart and Genevieve's were intertwined, where he sat by her side as ruler. It wasn't just a lovesick fantasy. It was sedition, a challenge to my very throne. The boy wasn't simply an honorable fool. He was a threat, dreaming of regicide and usurpation under the guise of true love. The pity I felt evaporated, replaced by a cold, hard rage. The northern border can wait. This snake must be crushed before it has the chance to strike. I need to arrange an accident for Sir Gareth, something quiet and permanent. Genevieve just sits in her room, staring at the square tower, unaware that her foolish romance has sealed his fate, while I must focus on securing my borders and my life. The realm demands sacrifices, and it seems today that sacrifice is the life of an honorable young man who dared to dream too high.
Dawn broke gray and damp, a fitting color for the grim business ahead. The execution block was set up in the main courtyard, a morbid theater for my subjects and, crucially, for my daughter. I stood on the balcony overlooking the yard, the Duke of Northington at my side, his expression one of stoic approval. The air was heavy with silence as the crowd gathered, hushed whispers giving way to a dreadful quiet as Sir Gareth was led out. The boy looked pale, exhausted, but he held his head high, his eyes fixed on my balcony. No, past my balcony, up to Genevieve's window. Genevieve was there, of course, held back by her ladies-in-waiting, her face a mask of horror and disbelief as she finally understood the fate of her knight. A single, heart-wrenching scream tore from her throat as Ulrich positioned Gareth at the block. The boy never looked away from her window, and in that moment, I hated him more than ever for his stubborn, defiant dignity, for proving me a tyrant in the eyes of my people and my child. The sword fell. It was swift and clean, as Ulrich promised. The crowd gasped. Genevieve collapsed into sobs in her chambers. The immediate threat to my throne was neutralized. The Duke of Northington and I finalized our agreement later that morning over port. The alliance was secure. The kingdom was safe. That evening, I sat alone in my study, the very room where the young knight had stood speaking of love. The weight on my shoulders was heavier than ever. I had secured the borders, prevented a potential uprising, and ensured the stability of the crown. I had done my duty as king, but the silence in the castle was profound. Genevieve refused to leave her room, her sorrow a suffocating presence I could feel in every stone of the castle. I had saved the kingdom, yes, but in doing so, I felt as though I had sacrificed my last remaining piece of humanity. I picked up the damnable love poem, the source of all this trouble. The lines about his rule now read less like sedition and more like the desperate dreams of a fool. A fool who had more love in his heart than I had in my entire kingdom. I was a king, but in the silence of the night, I was a lonely, bitter old man who had chosen power over a daughter's happiness, and I feared I could never forgive myself for that choice.
The rage had not cooled with the dawn. If anything, the gray morning light solidified my resolve. The boy, Gareth, was no longer a lovesick fool deserving of pity. He was a traitor planning to steal my throne and my daughter. He had to be dealt with, and quickly. I summoned my most trusted captain of the guard, Sir Ulrich. Ulrich is a man of few words and absolute loyalty, someone who understands that the well-being of the realm sometimes requires actions that the bards will never sing about. I handed him the poem and watched his expression shift from stony professionalism to cold understanding. "He dreams of wearing my crown, Ulrich," I said, keeping my voice low and steady. "Under the cover of true love, he plots sedition." Ulrich nodded once. "The square tower dungeons are notoriously damp, Your Majesty. A fall down the steep, narrow steps is not uncommon for a prisoner trying to escape their fate. They are terribly unsafe." A grim smile touched my lips. "See to it, then, Captain. A simple, regrettable accident. The body can be buried quickly in unconsecrated ground. The princess will mourn, but the realm will be safe." The matter was settled. I returned to my map room, focusing my mind on troop movements and trade treaties, trying to push the image of the young knight's hopeful face from my mind. A king cannot afford sentimentality. But as the afternoon wore on, a different kind of dread began to settle in my stomach, one colder than rage. Alara, no, Genevieve, was a spirited girl. She would not accept a simple disappearance. She might not guess I had a hand in it, but she would cause a scene, perhaps even flee the castle to search for him. The Duke of Northington was arriving tomorrow for the formal engagement talks. This needed to be quick, clean, and provide closure. I sent for Ulrich again just as the sun began to set. "The accident will have to wait," I told him, the words tasting like ash in my mouth. "A public execution for high treason at dawn tomorrow. We must make an example of him, crush all hope of rebellion in the heart of my daughter and anyone else who listens to the bards." The cold in my gut intensified. There was no going back now.